great show for you guys today. It's me and myself, me and myself, and I, and all three persons,
It's Jesse.
and Seth and Ben, which I'm pretty excited about the show. Obviously, that's why I stuttered a little bit, but I'm really excited because Ben used to work on that campaign, and Ben was an amazing, to me, a very smart USF student, and we've been around. We've been around a couple places together. We've been on abortion rallies, and we've been. It's been pretty cool. It's been pretty adventurous. So I look forward to talking to you guys about the show, and we look talk about our wide range of issues, especially with the Florida Supreme Court giving us a big victory. And so we'll talk about that and other things. With that being said, go ahead, Seth.
How's it going, guys? We're getting back to being consistent again. I feel we're at least like every week now, huh? That's good. We got some big guests coming up. So now we got a big guest right now. We got Ben Braver of Bravernomics. Is that pronounced correctly, my friend?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
All right, Bravernomics, a new political economic talk show on YouTube. I'll plug everything in the bio. Yeah, we used to work in the campaign together. It was kind of like just the three of us at one point. And here we are back again.
Yeah,
Ben, what have you been up to for 2 years or so?
The last 2 years, I've been doing a lot. I led the Stand for Freedom movement, which was this incredible group of organizers from around the state of Florida. It was in response to HB 999, HB 1 in Florida, which literally took out critical thinking as something you could do in a Florida college. And HB 1 took $4 billion of public education money and gave it to private school systems. So just gave it to took it from poor people, gave it to rich people. And so we led a 5,000 person walkout across every single public college in the state against that. And it was incredible. Of course, was spread across the nation on MSNBC, CNN, and in defense of trans rights too, because they were completely undermining trans people's right to privacy by taking their health records from Florida schools. Then I became the director of state and local policy for the Young Democrats of America, which was incredible. And we started this initiative to get a Students' Bill of Rights across every single state. We're still working on that, have a lot of organizations partnered with us along like Southern Poverty Law Center, League of Women Voters, Young Democrats of America. And now I'm a teacher and I'm starting a YouTube channel to talk about economics because we don't properly teach it in our school system, which means a lot of people don't grow up understanding the basics about it. And so people like this modern Republican conservative party will just lie and about basic economics or just simply won't understand it. And people believe them. And it's a shame because economics is a science. And for some reason, we're stuck arguing about the very basics of it rather than just accepting the fact that we need to get people out of poverty, and there are very simple ways to do that. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Yeah, and that's pretty exciting. I mean, one of my favorite topics in school was economics. It was one of the things I made an A in that class. It was really cool because it's kind of like economics kind of coincides a lot with politics because it's really the study of human behavior, and where politics is, the practice of reacting, communicating to get humans to do certain things. So economics is a very important, vital factor in not only just politics, but also in policymaking. And majority of the jobs, I would say 99% of the jobs in America, don't quote me on that because I'm not really I'm not taking that from anywhere, any source, but in my opinion, 99% of the jobs in America has economics in it, and decision making and data analysis, and all that is in economics. And so I'm really fascinated to see what the show is going to do and show how the show is going to really show the behind the scenes of every political campaign or behind the scenes of a lot of these policymakers, to study the economics of what they're doing. Because there's an old saying that if you follow the money, you'll know what's going on. And so I really look forward to seeing what that show is going to bring to the table and talking about Florida and the money. Um, so, I mean, that brings kind of to my first topic. I mean, when we follow the money, what's going on here in Florida? It's got to be kind of amazing. I'm smiling, and the reason why I'm smiling is because the Democrats, they've pulled off one of to me, the biggest Hail Mary pass I've ever seen. We've been kicked in the gut for the last 3 years here in Florida as a Democrat, and Ben will speak more on that. But I'm pretty excited to know that we've gotten some really good wins here, and against a very conservative court in the Florida Supreme Court, which was in a testament to them actually upholding their values of what they're oath to, which is to follow the law. So it's I'm gonna let Ben talk a little bit more about what his thoughts were. How you felt when you first heard about the 12-week abortion ban, now the 6-week abortion ban, and what some of the things that he thought, initiatives that he worked on to get us here to this day, to allow the Florida Supreme Court, to essentially say, hey, guess what? The Florida voters decide how they want their state to be run.
Yeah. So when I first heard about it was at this Planned Parenthood. I was the director of outreach for the Planned Parenthood Generation Action at USF. And that's really what got me most directly involved in activism through, pro-choice avenues. And so it's what my first big drive was. And so I've always been and of course it's one of the basic human rights we're not, allowing half the population of this country to have. And I first learned about the drive right when it started because I knew one of the organizers, Lauren Bernzel, who is an incredible person. I mean, one of the hardest working people, most effective people, best people I've ever met in my life. And she's the organizing director on this drive. What they did was incredible. And the thing is, I'm not so impressed with our court because what they had to do in order to get this done was not only get 400,000 more signatures than they needed, because the Supreme Court was rejecting every single one they could, but they also had to tailor fit this amendment to exactly what the court wants to hear. If they had put a single comma out of place, the court would have rejected it if they could, right? Yeah. It's just the court had to accept it, or else it's going to the Supreme Court of the United States. And on the same day, the Florida Supreme Court okayed the 6-week abortion ban. The court is clearly in favor of limiting people's rights. And so they had to put it up to pass, but it's great that it's on the ballot. It is incredible. It's so many people took their so much hard work. And now we can flip Florida blue. We fully can. This is an important enough decision that people care about. They can show up to the polls and we can flip it blue.
Well, your thoughts on stuff?
Gerrymandering, so maybe in the statewide election, we got a shot. But as Jess and we all experienced, there was two Democratic districts in Tampa area. Now there's only one, and that was intentional.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Jess would be in the hospital right now.
Well, I mean, politics is politics. I mean, for us, I think we've done so well nationally that there's no reason why we can't translate that same message here statewide in Florida. Steph has the lucky benefit of living in California. He has Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, he's not the best, but he's Ron DeSantis.
Better Ron DeSantis, So for us, we have to kind of deal with kind of a hurricane situation here in Florida, where a lot of people moving here are traditionally Democrats, which are weird. They were just kind of restricted by COVID, and so they wanted to move into a state that had all this freedoms. And what happened was, it was everybody was yeah, DeSantis, you're sticking to the man, the American value thing, which is us against a big brother. But then what happened was people who moved here they started to realize, man, Florida has no basic anything. Like, there's no rights for people in Florida.
No health care.
Like, people are starting, no health care, no, like, I do landlord tenant law, and a lot of people get evicted all the time, and they're like, okay, what's our tenants' rights here? There's like, this is Florida. There's no such thing as tenant rights in Florida. It's like the landlord's king, and we can catch the landlord slipping, but that's about it. I mean, there's no actual right that you have, and they're shocked because they're like every other state has tenant rights. It's like, yeah, but not here. So I think a lot of people's eyes are awakening to the fact that, Florida is really behind on certain of these progressive issues. And I think that this opportunity we have to have marijuana, which is a very progressive issue, and we have abortion rights, which, we're taking a very progressive stance on. It's the first kind of litmus test for us as a state to see that, are we really truly a red state, or are we still that purple state that the country can rely on, that they're not fully red, they're not fully blue. And I think that scares the Republicans in the state because they know if this comes out like they did the first time we passed the marijuana laws here, it's going to show that we're still a progressive state and that we just need to fix our party system in the state, which I think is kind of really what the big issue is. Really, is our party system. It's not really so much that the people are there; it's just our system is not really. It's just not really. It's not well run, for lack of a better term. I think it's going to change now. There's a new Florida Democratic head.
Yeah, she's incredible. Oh my God, she's a great organizer. And like she does stuff. She gets out there on the field. You feel her presence.
Exactly, but she's got to fix 20 years of nonsense. 20, 30 years of nonsense. So we got to give her some time. But she's done so far. She's done a great job. She's gotten a Democratic elected in Jacksonville as a mayor. She's got these initiatives passed. She's doing a great job as a party chair.
She started a youth council, which is incredibly important.
Yeah, say that again.
Nikki Fried,
yeah.
Can I tell you all a story? The way I met her, we were at a Pride event, and I was like waiting in line to talk to Kathy Castor because I was her intern. And I was like, I would say hi, all that, and then Nikki Fried steps up next to me, and I'm dressed like an insane person in tie-dye tank top with a pink guitar on my back, and I accidentally bump into her, and I go "Oh, hi, I love the Florida Dems. I work with them. Who are you?" And she goes, "I'm Nikki Fried," and I'm like. That's
a real.
No, she was because to me she was the commissioner of agriculture and a name that I heard about the whole election thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't so involved with the Florida Democratic Party then, so I didn't know her face.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said. Yeah, go ahead, Zeph.
I was just saying we had some social events, Jesse and I, with all these other candidates in the Democratic Party. Do you remember? Yeah, I definitely remember talking to her campaign manager for a while. Still can't believe they didn't know me.
Yeah, I've talked to them. I mean, I honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I didn't after the election, my election, I felt like we had to do some kind of reflection point as a party because it was more so we're kind of appointing people versus actually picking the right candidate. That was kind of what we were doing. And I like Nikki Fried because she doesn't come from that established class of Democrats who's been there, who's done that. She's really, I think, in my opinion, from outside looking in, because I haven't really been active, but from outside looking in, what I really see from her is just she's going to say something and she's going to back it up, and that goes a long way in politics, in my opinion, because there's a lot of people who talk but they don't back it up, So I look forward to it. I'm looking excited, and I can't wait to see. I'm excited. I was like, yeah, let me go knock on doors, because I want us to get that 70-80% turnout, because that's going to win. Joe Biden's going to win, even though I'm not very fan. I've been very vocal about me not being a fan of Joe Biden, but he's definitely going to win if we have a 78% turnout for those particular issues because those people are going to be blue Democrats. I mean, there's a lot of Republicans who smoke weed, but for the most part, they're going to be. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. So tell us more about your show, Ben. So we're gonna go. You're gonna start this show. When? Where? What's your first guest? What you have lined up? What do you?
So it's not really a talk show. I mean, I do want to do a talk show. I was actually talking to Elizabeth Warren's team about it.
Yeah.
And so like, and like a few other like people. And so at some point in the future, I would like to like talk to people about it. Like on it. Sorry, have people on it. But
Yeah.
I'm not ready for that yet because I don't have a well enough, fleshed out, direction for the channel. So right now, what it is are basically 5 to 15-minute rants about specific topics and what policies, why politicians hold certain political viewpoints, and what the better ones are. Because I believe that government should be applied ethics, and economics is the science of ethics. So all we have to do is have a good understanding of the economics of any issue, and we can figure out what the most ethical thing and therefore best policy to implement is.
Elaborate on that a little bit. I've never heard that. Like economics is the science behind ethics, which is more of a not a science but a morality issue. Your ethics come from what you deem as moral or not. And so, explain to me how those two connect together.
So, ethics really deals like the distinction between it and morality is vague and fuzzy and doesn't really matter. I believe that both of them are basically what values we as a society choose to care about and how we think they should be furthered, right? And economics is literally how we deal with value in society, right? One of the things that we care about, one of our virtues, one of our values is making sure there are fewer poor people. One of our values is growth. One of our values is, under our capitalist system, is growth of capital. And that's what our governmental ethics are. Our primary value is the growth of capital, making more money. Just in the system, we don't care about where it's spent. So that's a bad value to have. A more important value should just be raising the living standards of every single person in this country, right? That should be the most basic value, not just creating more capital. And there are certain policy choices that will promote that value, and there's certain policy choices that promote just the capitalist value of creating more capital. And so economics is applied ethics in that it takes our values and puts them into reality. We can make sure there are less poor people by promoting the child tax credit. That'll reduce literally half of all child poverty. We can do universal health care, which not only is better for every person in America, like to have health care, but it'll take 13% off the national health care bill in our country. We can also, there are a ton more policies, but having a basic understanding of economics means that we can understand what the right policy is. And that it's not really crazy complicated. And when we implement bad policy, we're behaving bad ethically.
That's I like that. So, Seth, what are some of those virtues that you think that morally us progressives we should value more in terms of the policy positions to actually push more economic agenda? If I explain that, wow, I said that kind of backwards. Let me rephrase that. So, what are some of the policy positions that the progressives have that you think, Seth, that really ties to more ethical? I guess more. How would I say this? Credo, you would say? Yeah.
Oh,
I think
that's. I'm sorry. I thought he was asking out to me. Okay.
Go ahead.
The thing about progressives is people usually associate with just equality, but like the real virtue of somebody that's actually a progressive is freedom and fairness, and the fact that freedom is, and not equal standard, and that freedom is not something accessible to somebody that's entrapped under certain corporations and private external forces, all these sort of things that are as a result of our society and our, the applied results of economics and the classical liberal approach to, our hands-off approach to business owners have property right, therefore they have the right to control what you do with their income. I mean, their capital, as if like their ownership of capital is more important than your ability to make decisions freely as a person, as a worker, essentially. So it's kind of like gives the authority to a capital owner instead of you having an innate freedom, which is into you as a human being. So we sort of believe that like a lack of hierarchy, essentially, that everybody sort of has freedom equally applied, and that like, just because you own more property doesn't mean necessarily that you have more ownership over other people or more authority necessarily. So I think that there's a certain balance that progressives are missing when it comes to discussing freedom, and the fact it's not an equal standard.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one common American value, it's goddamn freedom.
Well,
Both Republicans, both Republicans and Democrats value freedom, and they also believe that the other group doesn't value it the right way, right? And the truth is, if you align with the Republican Party, you probably really care about negative freedoms. If you align with the Democratic Party, you care about positive freedom. Those are like the economic terms for it. And
break down
the party.
Sorry, let me cut you off. But break down what's the difference between negative freedom and positive freedom. Because I don't know.
I will.
Yeah.
The Conservative Party, it's conservative. They think things should stay the way they are, but they really haven't been conservative in a while, right? They've been progressive. They're trying to change the party in the country into their, movement. And their movement is a negative freedom, which means the distinction is that negative freedoms are like, I have the freedom to punch you in the face if I want to, right? Or I have the freedom not to pay anything to the government and keep all my money to myself.
Yeah.
Positive freedoms are freedoms we get when we have other limitations. So like, because we can't just punch each other in the face, we have the ability to like make flights to Paris, because if we were just punching each other in the face all the time, we wouldn't be able to have a society that allows us to like have the FAA and go to Paris, right? So there are certain limitations we agree to, like in the social contract, basically, that give us better opportunities. And if you're aligned with the Republican, you probably believe that you're better off with more negative freedoms. If you're aligned with the Democratic Party, you probably believe you're better off with more positive freedoms. And I think that's simply true. I would rather live in a world where we pay taxes and we get all the benefits from it than live in a world that we do right now where there are oligarchical companies controlling our lives.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, my thing is, here's the thing. So going back to your podcast and your premise, you want to explain the relationship between ethical policies through the lens of economic viewpoint. Isn't economic viewpoint, I think the main, I can't even think of the guy who created economics. I think it's Alex something, starts with A. Isn't his main viewpoint that economics is the studying and dealing with the scarcity? So that's like the main overarching theme. How do we react when we are kind of put in a position where we have to make a choice? So how do you explain that principle with your idea of the moral aspect of it?
Yeah, so this guy, Richard Ricardo, back in a few hundred years ago, was the first guy to really talk about scarcity, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's when economics got its shape as a social science dealing with scarcity. Yeah. Oh, shoot. My PC's been unplugged. That's the problem.
Oh,
Oh,
we don't,
much better.
whatever you do with it, it's better.
And my PC was unplugged.
Oh, wow.
Is my
But
audio
yeah,
still?
Huh?
Said my audio still spotty? Jesse said it was sounding spotty. Sound okay?
A little bit, but it's better now.
It's a little bit, but it's way better.
Okay,
Yeah,
that works.
So Richard Ricardo was the guy who did the scarcity revolution, where we started to understand scarcity as like a real problem in the world. And it was. And then the Industrial Revolution happened. And then another 200 years passed. And we have an abundance of goods. We throw away like a third of the food that we make, right? We have 33 homes for every unhoused person in America. It also only costs like $33 billion, the price of 2 aircraft carriers, to house and feed every single person in America. I mean, every unhoused person in America. Like, scarcity isn't a problem anymore. We solved that. Like, capitalism, if it's good at one thing, it's growth. And like, hell yeah, we grew. You know, we throw out 88 million garments every year. Right? 88 million tons of garments every year, I think. Like, we don't have a lack of resources. We have a lack of, I wouldn't even call it generosity, because really that wealth has been stolen, as we know. There are 6 people in this country. This is my favorite statistic, and the most one ever. There are 6 people in this country that don't just control as much wealth, but control $88 billion more than the bottom half of all Americans combined. All 125 million of us. $88 billion more. In terms of rent money, the 125 million Americans, the bottom half of all America, have on average 6 months of rent money to live off of if they get fired or something. Those 6 people have 65 million years in rent money. They could have been paying the rent at today's astronomical prices since the dinosaurs roamed the earth. It's not a problem of scarcity, it's a problem of distribution. And what we choose to distribute lies in what we value. And do we value accumulation of wealth or quality of life more?
That's a good question.
I see.
And I guess that's
is not really. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's still our connections off a little bit, but I still see. I see conservatism. Their value is not fundamentally freedom. It's a lack of like limit on power. And it's like I, the person in society, I have as much right to acquire as much power as possible, uninhibited by the rest of the world around me, which is essentially fundamentally fascism. You know what I mean? I think that most conservatives fundamentally would not be mad if they had a conservative that held absolute power as long as it was in support of their policy positions. So I don't think a fundamental belief in freedom or democracy. So I feel like we generally, when we talk about conservatives, we're talking about a different group of people than the neoconservatives that, you know, ran the country 20 years ago. So we're in a completely different era of, you know, just the bare minimum of liberalism versus illiberalism.
No, I mean,
I don't remember
okay. So I would agree with you. I mean, I think right now there's a shifting in policies, because right now there used to be this 2-party system that we have, right? Which was just Democrat, Republican. You kind of know who you were, no matter how you grew up. Your parents either were Democrats or Republican. Now I feel like we've morphed into this 4-party system that no one really talks about really much. But you have the Democrat, which are tend to be the traditional established Democrats versus progressives, and you have the conservative Republicans versus the ultra conservative Republicans, and you kind of have these 4-party systems. And I wonder if we're using our moralities are changing, and the parties are switching as we're right now living. Because there was a big shift in after the Civil Rights Act passed between the Democrats and Republicans. There was a big switch, and I think right now we're in that same switch that's happening right now. I think that you're seeing a lot of, and you saw this with Bernie, there was a lot of Republicans, conservatives who voted with the progressives as turns for Bernie. And you're starting to see that there's the morality issue that they're really kind of focused on. And for purposes of this conversation, morality means ethics. The morality is essentially becoming, we just want the resources to trickle down to the lower class because they're not. And whatever for reason or not, as Jeff says, to fascism and control, power of control, um, it's just not. And we're having this system in the society where there's changes are being there's two systems. Like federal government can do something, but yet the middle class and the lower class will never feel those changes. And it's like, but the rich automatically sees the impact of those changes. So you have a lot of these policy positions that are out there that are really kind of affecting, they're passing, excuse me, I should say, the policy positions that are passing in Congress that really only affects that 1%. And the majority of people, they're not really being, I guess their needs are not even being met, honestly, by their elected official. So I guess my question is, what party do you guys think is going to be the first to address that issue? And I think that's the party that's going to probably win. Because even though I like Biden, I think he's doing a great job, I still think a lot of his policies are geared more towards the upper end of the economy and not the lower end. And that's obviously because of Republicans too. That's not, Joe Biden wants to pass things that affects the lower class, but he does get stopped a lot by the Republicans. But I wonder which party is going to do that. And the reason why I say this is I wonder is because I'm seeing a lot of inroads to Trump, to the minority vote and the youth vote. I mean, he's not going to win it, but the percentages are still going up. And I think that could be a little message in the statistics that say that, hey, whatever you're doing up here is not reflecting down here. What do you guys thoughts about that?
I think
that's inherent anti-establishmentism. Just the fact that it's the Democrats are the establishment. I think that just makes people want to be. It's just a cycle back and forth between who's the anti-establishment party and who's the establishment party. So that's all that is happening. Sorry, Ben, for cutting you off.
Yeah, sorry.
No, yeah. I'm glad you said that. I think like yes, it's I can't speak anymore. Anti-disestablishmentarianism. I think beyond disestablishmentarianism, there we go. Yeah. It's I just say the longer word and able to say in order to say the shorter word. But I think beyond that, it goes into like we see that the powers that be have never cared about the lower classes. Like we see the faults of capitalism, we see how it regresses into mercantilism, like all the time, and like we understand that it doesn't help the lower class. So anybody who says anything about that gets the vote. That's why Trump is doing so well, because he speaks to people who believe that they've been left behind. Right? Yes. Biden doesn't really. Even though Biden's policies are better at keeping people from being left behind, Trump speaks to it. Biden doesn't seem to. Yeah. And it's weird because the extreme, like you said, that they're split into four parties. I think you're so right about that. And the ultra right and the ultra left both agree about campaign finance. Like Matt Gaetz and AOC are the two biggest proponents of limiting dark money. Right? Yeah. And it's because they're the people who have felt slighted by the current establishment. And like you'll see them agree on that thing. And yeah. And so I don't know, both parties are trying to capitalize on it. The right wing is their right wing, ultra right wing is fascist. The ultra left wing simply isn't, as the ultra left wing is better. And they should win out. Unfortunately, the ultra right wing is better at propaganda, so they might win out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I think that there are some commonalities within the parties that I think that both sides are missing, and kind of brings me to the next point that I think you guys would love to talk about, which is RFK. I watched the CNN debate, not debate, sorry. It was what was it? I think he was just a regular guest. It wasn't like a special or anything like that. He was just a guest. And, people were just saying, hey, you're ruining this for Biden, or hey, you're ruining this for Trump. whatever talk show host, whatever network he goes on, they say he's ruining it for that candidate. But I look at it and I'm saying, well, how is he ruining it? Because to me, RFK is not a powerful speaker. Is what I've seen, and he's not really charismatic. He must be talking about something that people feel like the left and the right are not talking about. And I mean, granted, we talked about this the other day, stuff that he doesn't have ballot access, so he's probably not going to win. But he is eroding a lot of, confidence and the margins between the Trump and Biden election. And I think that he, Cornel West, who else one of those long shotters? Whoever the No Label Party, Joe Sign, whoever the No Labels decide to run, they're speaking of. Yeah, Leverton. There's so many of them. They are speaking to him, and I think that it really is going back to your premise, Ben. That I think that there's a secret morale that people don't talk about, and that morality is, I want a champion to be the one to lead me, who's going to speak up when eggs are going to be thrown at him, and I think that is the secret message that a lot of people are missing. And I feel like, what are some policies that even Biden can do to show people like, hey, he's speaking for me?
So first of all, with RFK, we live in a democracy, and for too long we haven't actually. For too long it's just been a two-party system, and there should always be strong third-party challengers. Yes. There should be. Mm-hmm. And so it's not a problem that RFK is a strong third-party challenger, and I would rather have him than Trump.
Yeah.
I don't like him. He's anti-vax. He used to be fine. I don't like the vice president pick. I saw her speak. Yeah, she should be nervous, but also she bought that position. I don't think that's great.
Yeah. You say she bought it?
$4 million. Yeah, she spent $4 million.
Explicit.
And
about the commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a creepy commercial, by the way.
But policies Biden can implement. I mean, he's actually done a lot. If we judge him purely on his domestic policy, his foreign policy is good except for Israel.
Biden?
Yeah.
I think Biden. The quick chime in, and I'll let you go, Ben. Don't lose your train of thought. I think his foreign policy has been a disaster, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah.
Other than Afghanistan.
No, I think it's been a disaster, and I'll get my point later. But go ahead.
Okay, but his domestic policy has been good, and one of the best things he's done that nobody talks about is how he's diversified the court. He has put so many Black, Hispanic, and female judges in the bench that will have lasting implications forever, that will be just so good for the American people. And it's just something that people don't think about normally. And also, I'm a little bit glad they don't, because then Mitch McConnell, then the Republicans would be even more overzealous with that. But it's an amazing thing he's done. The amount of student aid he's managed to pass through is incredible. The Inflation Reduction Act is great. He let the Fed do their job. I know it's Jerome Powell and Janet Yellen's really responsibility, but got a soft landing. He's done a lot.
Yeah.
Now, he hasn't done everything he could, and he hasn't tried to do everything he could. But what we need more is the child tax credit. We need to take the education system under the federal government, because one of the worst things in this country is how terrible our funding of our schools are. And there's some places that get $25,000 per student, some places get $7,000 per student. Right? The disparity is incredible, and that's one of the worst things happening to our country, because it helps everybody to have a good public education system.
Exactly.
And more than that, I mean, implement UBI. If you could do it, that'd be one of the best things for every single person in this country.
Yeah. No, I know. Like I said, his domestic policies are for me as a progressivist, I champion them. The problem is I feel like they're not the ones that are speaking to young voters, and I don't know why. Maybe because we understand the realities of the AI that's coming in the next 3 to 5 years. We understand the reality is that, like, hey, a lot of us are not going to be able to get a job. There's 66. Well, I preface by saying this. I looked at this stat like when I was 24, and I'm like 36 now. There were 66 majors in USF when I went there. There might be more. Um, and out of 66 majors, maybe 3 of them or 4 of them could be useful now in the next 10 years because of the impact of AI. And we still haven't talked about how we implement a UBI program. Now, I've seen we tested it several times over with the stimulus packages, but I haven't seen any real concrete plan of saying, like, can we sustain this program for a year? I think we can. I think we can do it, but I haven't seen any. No, we've done it. America's done it.
California and a great study out of Toronto that show the long-term effects of a universal basic income program. And actually, one of the biggest problems you get with UBI, one of the biggest things that people tell you is that, like, people won't work. And the reason is because it'll raise their reservation wage. If you have more unearned income, which means you get more money from the government or your stocks, then you'll spend less time at work because that money will be worth less to you than what you get from work because you'll have enough from your unearned income, right? So you don't need more earned income.
Okay.
The thing is, what we saw when we implemented a universal basic income program in, like, Stockton, California, was a 40% increase in the number of people who got it and were working. You're 40% more likely than those who didn't get it to get a job because so many people are working paycheck to paycheck. If they're working at all, they're underemployed and they don't have the ability to go and search for another job. If they have a little bit more time to, like, buy a good suit, or, like, if they're unhoused, to get a PO box so they can actually, like, get a mailing address to then apply for a job, it has a huge benefit for the number of people who will become properly employed, not just underemployed. And so not only is it possible to do, it's better for our economy. One of the biggest problems I have with people who claim to be capitalists is that they think it means that the government should be hands off. Adam Smith in 1776, when he wrote the Wealth of Nations, the Bible of Capitalism, he didn't say the invisible hand should be left alone. In fact, he said that it should be controlled by the government to make sure corporations don't abuse it. And they have been. We saw the same thing back in the Gilded Age when we had this level of wealth inequality, right? Yeah. A universal basic income would be better to stabilize the economy from recessions. When people are living paycheck to paycheck, the minute they get fired, they can't contribute to the economy. When they can't contribute to the economy, more businesses have to fire more people, and the cycle goes on and on. If people aren't immediately thrown out of the economy the moment they're fired, then recessions are less likely to snowball. It's better for the economy to have people in stable economic situations. And it's better for businesses to still get that consumer base, even if all you care about is business. One final point, sorry to go on rants, is that with AI, we're going to be living in a post-labor world, right? Either we can be living in a world where we have labor and we have people, being just people's jobs being outsourced to machines, or we can recognize that we are being just as productive with less human labor, meaning we can share more wealth with less work, meaning that we could literally just be living in a utopia. Like, if we can get rid of most of the drudgery, be just as productive as we are right now, be producing just as much clothes, food, all that jazz, we can just give people universal basic income. And, most people will want to work. We're humans. We like doing it. When you give people that income, they work more. They just work at a happier place. They have less stress in their life because they're fully employed rather than underemployed. That's what we can choose to do. Make sure that we can either share the wealth and live in a post-labor world, or like a semi-post-labor world, or we can continue down our, destructive path.
The other thing about that is UBI also help inhibit your economic independence. Because if you have I mean, they might think you're relying on government, but really, it depends on how you're taxing it too. If it's a land value taxing too, you're just getting more money what you deserve, and you can use that to not feel reliant on a heavy-handed corporation that controls your life and controls your decisions. You can invest more money in more stocks and property, and then you can rise up into the middle class. You can invest and start a business. You can invest and go back to college and educate yourself and increase your skills. Like the amount of that would increase productivity, allowing people to be able to enter the job field that is catered towards them, like their skill set, instead of working just to survive. It would do so much for innovation and for standard of living all around the board. So it's just a no-brainer.
No, I think UBI is definitely a no-brainer. I just don't think we have the political courage to get it done. Well, at least not now. No. Hopefully in the next 10 years, in a decade, once these AI jobs start laying off a lot of workers, we will get serious about passing policies such as different UBI programs to remedy that issue.
And go ahead, Ben. And the weird thing about the lack of political will is that it would just even if you take it from a purely capitalist point of view, which is what most of the arguments are based on, it is still better to implement UBI. It makes the economy more stable, and unless the difference between capitalism and mercantilism is that in capitalism we have free markets which are only dictated by supply and demand, right? So when monopolies are creating huge barriers to entry, they're controlling what you're allowed to buy, right? Which they do. That's not a free market, right? That's mercantilist, which is when corporations and government just try to hoard all the wealth they can. That was the first real economic system, mercantilism. Yeah. And UBI would be capitalist. It would let people create more money. It would lower barriers to entry. It would create a more free market. What these corporations and capitalist politicians are arguing for is mercantilism, where the wealth gets hoarded in the hands of just a very few people. And we think that's what's going to create the best economic system. It's wrong. It's bad economics.
Yeah, I like it.
And, I wouldn't say UBI is necessarily capitalist. It can be compatible with capitalist or at least market systems. I still see capitalism as a consolidation of wealth amongst propertiers in the bourgeois class. You can have a market system efficiently run, like a liberal socialist system. It spreads out the wealth and the property ownership with market economy. And I think that should be the aim of a progressive economy, is to increase property ownership, increase competition, raise more people into the middle class, so that more people have disposable income that they can invest into something like a cooperative or like a housing co-op or anything that gives them more property opportunities. Because in living in California, until you die, you don't really have a shot of owning property, especially in the cities. So for some Americans, it's just out of the question whether or not they have access to property. And in the United States, property, everything. Property determines how much power you have in society and over your own life. So it's an essential that we expand freedom for more people, more opportunities.
I agree. I think UBI is one of those things that it will shift our economics, just like when we got off the gold standard. It will be another seismic shift economically for the country. That's just, like I said, it goes back to just Republicans understanding their viewpoint of it and Democrats, because they both agree with it. They just disagree on how to implement it. And because Republicans, they use it as a token to be like, well, if we do it, let's just get rid of entitlement programs. And then Democrats are like, well, we can do that in addition to entitlement programs. And that's what really the really sticking point between that program. But I think there's a universal consensus that everyone knows that most Americans are going to be laid off in the next 10, 20 years with AI. I mean, that's a consensus. We know that. What we do about it is what we're trying to battle out. And I think that we need to continue to have a conversation, have political courage to do something about it. So
and I think it's evil to like even have that as a debate, like because like what are the options? Either we let people live or we let them die. Like
yeah.
those are the two options when you boil it down. Either we make it easier for people to live a good life, or we throw them on the streets.
Yeah.
Like they're the two options, and why is that a debate?
It's not. You're right, and it goes back to Seth saying it's that bourgeois class that they feel like there's something about when someone makes it, they for some reason in their mind it triggered this idea that they got there by themselves, like there was no help. Like
Yeah.
I achieved $1 billion company with 0 employees. It's not practical. It's not. No one can understand. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but no one understand the complex that most rich people have. But they
Yeah.
feel that, and what happens is when you, especially in politics, when you're there for a long time, you start to get that God complex. You start to get that idea that why can't people make it on themselves? Why do they need assistance? And they don't think about the idea that, let's just be honest, in 1960 it was a lot easier to make it than 2023. It's like
If you're
you
white,
can have a bachelor's degree. Not even
Yeah.
if you're white, you're still struggling in this economy. You can be white, black, Hispanic, Latino. You can have a master's degree, you can have a doctor's degree, and you'll
I
still be
think back in the 60s, it was easier if you were white then.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry, Seth. Yeah. It would be easier.
I
if you
was,
were
I was
Yeah, I was thinking about it in the context of now, but yeah, in the 60s, it would have been easier to make it just on just pure like I'm white, I don't have to try. Now, if you're white, you better try. You're gonna be poor. So
One reason for that is that there was more entry level jobs.
yeah,
Like there were simply more entry level jobs that paid well. Now it's still like all hourly and minimum wage, and you have to have a master's in order to get a good job this time, which is why vocational school is incredibly important, which is one of the great things that Biden did, making that free.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, you're right. Vocational schools are amazing, and I think that there was consensus there. And then, like everything in politics, they tried to separate it, and they're like, "Oh no," But the reality is, there's so many jobs here in America. Like, for example, these AI jobs that are about to come. It's like that's going to be a vocation, just like computer programming, web design, AC installation, electric. One thing I always said, they make fun of me for saying this joke, but I'll tell everybody in the audience. This joke is so funny. When you think about AI and computers and internet, you know what? The one thing that everyone forgets that it has to be plugged in. So electrician job is never going away. So like you will always need an electrician. You will always need
until Boston Dynamics invents robots with nimble fingers.
Yeah. Really? Well, the nimble fingers need batteries.
Yeah, but we have Elon Musk got that covered with like the automated battery factory.
Yeah, but okay. So he's trying to make machines.
Yeah,
he's a genius, Elon. But and then
what?
I don't know.
Well, he's a genius in that back, and sometimes we put geniuses as someone who's like has to be a good person. Sometimes geniuses are evil, and we have to understand that. Like we have to understand that.
He just invested at the right time in the right place. He made the smart move of like.
Huh? Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
I said he just has.
Yeah, he made this
money ended by.
Yeah, he made the smart move of like making the Tesla charger different than any other EV to like corner the market, but that's like a shitty capitalist practice, not like a good thing. And like, yeah, he had PayPal, but he just invested in that from like his father's diamond mine or sapphire, whatever it was.
Yeah, South Africa. Yeah, big mine. What were you saying, Seth?
I don't know.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, there's something to say about evil geniuses sometimes, and smart investors. That's what makes American great, because you can be an average Joe and trip on a good idea and become a billionaire.
I will say what he did do that's really good is create a mystique around him as like this futurist. Like he did that fairly well, but then he let it get to his head, as you were saying before about politicians too, letting it get to your head. And like there's well documented psychological research that shows that people who are richer don't relate to poorer people. Like they become the out group, and they literally stop relating to them as much. And so politicians who become wealthy stop relating to poor people.
Yes. And I think what happens is, someone like for me, I grew up poor. My parents didn't have much money, but then I worked. My parents worked, and then I worked, and I got into the middle class. What happens is we forget sometimes. Sometimes we need to go back and just drive to the neighborhoods that we came from, to understand where we came from. Because what happens is when you start to be able to purchase things, you're not thinking about the money you're spending. It becomes this disconnect. Like, man, how much is milk? And then most people can't answer it. It's like, I don't know. I don't think about it. But the mom with 4 kids do think about it. And how do we continue to keep that mom mindset as we, are successful? And I think that's Seth was saying that sometimes when, as we go up with this capitalist system, is that we always seem to forget the people at the bottom of it because we're keep trying to step on the next person to get higher and higher and higher so that we can, make it. And that's kind of the negative drawbacks, like you were saying, Ben, of this capitalist system. One of the things that China tries to squash, which they really don't. I mean, honestly, here's a secret, people. China's not a socialist country. They're a capitalist country.
Not even.
They just like what you said, Seth?
I said not even.
Yeah, they're a very capitalist country. And so they have this idea that, we're socialists. No, the poor people are socialists. The rich people are not. They're still capitalists in China.
The rich people are socialists for their businesses. Like, they'll socialize. One of my favorite things that businesses will socialize their losses and privatize their gains. Right?
Explain that.
When they lose out, right, they'll have the government bail them out. When they win, it's all for them. Like we see it time and time again. Yeah. They will socialize their losses and privatize their gains. Like the healthcare industry, for instance, most pills created, 90% of that funding comes from the U.S. government, like most medicine. And then we have to pay for it again when we actually buy the pills. We paid for it once using our tax dollars, and we pay for it again. And these companies will claim that why Americans are paying a higher price is because of the research fees it costs. We already paid those research fees in our taxes. Yeah. Each pill has a very low marginal cost to actually produce. It is every other country pays like very little. I mean, like ridiculously less money than we do for our medicine, and it's just because the government doesn't regulate them like we should. Right?
We regulate them, but they pay for our regulators.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why our system is so messed up. Like, we do regulate them. We have the FDA. They're there. But we pay for those people to sit in those positions, in those board seats, in those decision-making. And so that goes back to capitalism. It's one of those things where you pay for play. And then there's negative drawbacks of, capitalism. Even though, like I said, this is the best. We are the biggest experiment in world history. And I think we're doing well in 225 years. We haven't killed each other. Closest thing has been to an insurrection.
We only killed each other once. Or we only really each other once.
We did kill each other once. I forget about the Civil War. Sorry about that. Don't Nikki Haley me, please. I did forget. It was about slavery, guys. I just want to say.
It just got you.
Yeah, it was about slavery. But I would say that, we've, for the most part, haven't killed each other like Europe or something, because Europe been killing each other since the existence of Europe, so we haven't done that. So I think we're doing a good job, but our program and our platform is simply just to call out the truth that what we see is like, we've done well, but what are we doing to get better? And that's the problem. That's our whole, I guess, our issue spotting here in this program is to always focus on what's the progressive move, what is the better move for our country. And, that's why we're glad you guys tune in every week. We have people like Ben who is going to create his own podcast, which we'll be plugging in uh, every week on our Twitter to try to make sure we spread that message, because it's important to understand, guys, that politics is economics. It truly is. It's decision making. It's really focused and geared towards, how do we influence our voters to vote for us, and and that's through policy making, and that's through, you know, get out, go TV, get out the vote, outreaches, stuff like that. All are driven by economics. So, I thank Ben for taking the time to come to the show and kind of, you know, hopefully we can have him again. That's what's up. But
Sure.
I thank you I thank you for coming to the show, because those are the things that I believe is important that we cast a light on this show, because it's always been this show's main objective is to make sure that we get our progressive messaging clear. So when we get out there, we get people to vote on progressive issues. And the more information that we need and we have allows us to communicate our policy positions better. And because at the end of the day, politics is about one thing, it's communicating. And if you can't communicate what you're saying, people are not going to understand it, and they're not going to feel anything that you say, because you can't relate to them. And so shows like Ben is going to be very important, so you guys can see the behind the scenes of why these policies are important. In our show, we talk every week about various topics, so we can also show you that. And we thank you for tuning in. But I'm not going to end on my final thoughts. I'm going to pass it to Seth, and then we're going to give Ben the final thoughts today to flip it up on you guys. But Seth, you got anything to say?
Well, you gotta keep tuning in. We got some big guests coming up, and I'm gonna keep reaching out. It's gonna be a much better season, more debate and conversation without outside guests. Me and Jesse talk. I'll probably get you sick of it. So I mean, I think we got a big guest. I don't know if it's next week or the next week after, but we will have Scott Santens. He's a massively huge account on Twitter. Gave Andrew Yang the idea for UBI. He's a major UBI advocate. So we're going to have pretty much a whole UBI-centered discussion whenever we have that episode. And then we're really going to have, pretty much, I've read his book. Like, it's a big deal to me. So we got a lot of, details we're going to learn from that episode. So, we're definitely going to promote Ben. Ben will be back. I'm sure it won't be long. I'm sure we're going to do a lot of collaborations that were together in the past. So we're pretty much on the same, thought stream when it comes to policies and values. So definitely subscribe to Ben. I think it's Bravernomics. Plug yourself again, Ben. Bravernomics.
Okay.
Anywhere else?
There's a Twitter for that.
So you can find him.
Yeah. I can't do. I just doom scroll all day long. I'm saving myself. From that.
Okay. So just go on YouTube, guys, and subscribe. And we're gonna subscribe. So subscribing is really good. And I'm just to chime in before Seth finishes final remarks. I kid you not, I watch YouTube more than I watch TV, because that's how many people I subscribe to now. So subscribe. It's important. It's very good, important. And it gives you a good algorithm. It'll fix your algorithm. Okay, sorry. We'll plug to YouTube there. Free advertising. Go ahead, Seth. What was you going to say?
Oh, I was good. I'm just passing it on to Ben so he can plug his show and give his final thought.
I appreciate y'all having me on the show. I always love talking to y'all, and of course, you were literally my first political job, really. Yeah. And so I'm always gonna treasure that. For anybody who wants to know, the way I got this job is I go to a Lightning game, and I was talking to my friend Sophie. I was like, what do I have to wear this blue? And my Democrat shirt is the perfect color of lightning blue. And so I wore that. And then I stopped at this donation table, right outside the Lightning game. And there was this woman who was trying to get us to sign up. And then somehow I convinced her to buy us a drink. I forget what happened there. Because I convinced her to buy us a drink. We got up to the booth that Seth was working at. They said, Democrats? And that's where we connected. So
I was literally like, oh no, I was gonna say I was literally like, hey, job, do you want to work for a campaign? And then that was it, just like that, just randomly.
Yeah.
That's how it happens.
And so anybody out there who wants to know how to get started, just get started. Go to mobilize.com. That's how you can work with. There's so many events all the time. Anything you want to do to help Democrats win, or just look somebody up, or wear your shirt all over the place. Also, I really believe that everybody should go in search of a better understanding of our economy, because our economy is our world. It just simply is. It controls every single decision that we make. It is the study of the decisions that we make. And I believe if you want to have a good understanding of our world, and especially of our political sphere, you should have a good understanding of our economy. Watch my video, watch my YouTube if you want that too. Very nice.
Yeah. Hey, Joe,
Right,
yeah, guys, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time. Let's well, hopefully you guys will be back next week. I'm not gonna say hopefully you guys are gonna be back. So we look forward to talking to you next week, guys. See ya.
Everybody have a good night.